Silicon Valley went through the most frantic 48 hours of its recent history between February 26th and 27th, 2026. You're watching Olhar Digital, the largest technology and science community in Brazil. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel to help make our community even stronger. Well, what started as a contractual dispute ended with an American company being declared a national security risk, something unprecedented in the United States, and its biggest rival set up right at the heart of the country's military command. The tug-of-war began when Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, stated that he could not, in good conscience, comply with the Pentagon's demands. The Department of Defense, also known as the Department of War, demanded the removal of safeguards from Claude, the startup's artificial intelligence model, against mass domestic surveillance and use in autonomous lethal weapons. Amodei's resistance triggered an unprecedented offensive. While the President of the United States, Donald Trump, attacked Anthropic on social media, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, labeled the company as a supply chain risk. In practice, this label is an attempt at corporate assassination, something historically reserved for foreign adversaries like China. Hours after Anthropic became, so to speak, an unwelcome company in the United States, the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, announced a deal with the Pentagon in which the company accepted all the terms for lawful use that its rival had rejected. In just 2 days, the frontier of this technology was split between the dogmatism of ethics and the pragmatism of power. Now, with a legal battle in federal courts and Claude at the top of app stores around the world, the case has become the first major constitutional test over who really controls artificial intelligence, the scientists who create it or the government that buys it. The roots of the saga between Anthropic, OpenAI, and the Pentagon lie in an ideological split that happened in 2021, as the New York Times recalls. That year, Dario Amodei, then vice president of research at OpenAI, and his sister Daniela Amodei led an exodus of researchers to found Anthropic. The reason was a crucial disagreement with Sam Altman. For the Amodei siblings, OpenAI was prioritizing the rapid commercialization of the technology at the expense of safety and ethics. While OpenAI was seeking market leadership, Anthropic positioned itself as a public benefit company, guided by an internal constitution to ensure the safety of its AI models. Despite this caution, Anthropic was not averse to the United States government. In July 2025, the startup signed a 2-year, $200 million deal, over 1 billion reais, with the Pentagon. Thanks to a partnership with Palantir, Claude became the preferred choice for corporate solutions, and the first artificial intelligence authorized for use in confidential military systems. In fact, during this period, Anthropic was ahead of OpenAI in integrating with the government's confidential networks. In just a bit, we'll explain this story in more detail. Artur Igreja, a specialist in technology and innovation, recalls this history and the milestones achieved by Anthropic.
Anthropic has had a contract with the U.S. government since 2024. At the time, the government was already evaluating which would be the best model, the best artificial intelligence for military purposes. They assessed a number of competitors, and Anthropic was selected as, the best model. This was in 2024, so Claude became the standard model for the U.S. Armed Forces, and a contract worth $200 million per year was signed. But from the very beginning, Anthropic set some boundaries regarding the use of this AI. One of them was that the AI could not be used for monitoring civilians, for monitoring people. So, for example, using camera footage in cities to monitor people's movements and behavior, especially without their consent, was off limits. But more importantly, the second guideline was about using AI in decision-making for autonomous weapons. And notice that an autonomous weapon here could be a robot, it could be an attack drone, or any kind of weaponry.
The United States Secretary of Defense issued a memorandum on January 9, 2026 that changed the climate of cooperation. Hegseth first demanded the integration of artificial intelligence into all American military operations. And second, the provision of technology without the ethical restrictions imposed by companies' terms of service. To reinforce the message, AI-generated posters featuring Hegseth's image were spread throughout the Pentagon with the phrase, "I want you to use artificial intelligence." This information comes from the New York Times. This ultimatum forced the immediate reopening of all existing contracts. This put Anthropic, the company whose technology was the most widely used in this context at the time, in the spotlight of negotiations. The fragile balance between Anthropic and the Pentagon was broken on February 15, 2026. On that day, the Wall Street Journal revealed that Anthropic had expressed concerns to Palantir about the role its technologies had played in the military operation that captured the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. In other words, and borrowing the Wall Street Journal's headline, the Pentagon had used Claude in the capture of Maduro. For Anthropic's CEO, what happened in Venezuela turned hypothetical risks into reality. So the company began to formally express its concerns. The company claimed that its artificial intelligence was not reliable enough to operate autonomous drones or make lethal decisions without direct human supervision. Anthropic began to require contractual clauses that explicitly prohibited the use of its technology for mass domestic surveillance and the development of lethal autonomous weapons. The government was furious about this. For Hegseth and the Pentagon, Director of Technology Emil Michael, the resistance symbolized an attempt by a private company to dictate American national security policy, as recalled by the New York Times. On February 24th, during a tense meeting at the Pentagon that lasted less than an hour, the Secretary of Defense gave an ultimatum, one that would expire at 5 p.m. on February 27th. Anthropic would have to accept the terms for all lawful uses, or the $200 million contract would be canceled. This term would give the government carte blanche to use artificial intelligence in any scenario permitted by law. Then the standoff turned personal. The Pentagon's chief technology officer called Amode a liar and accused the CEO of having a god complex. And this happened in the most public place on the internet, X, formerly known as Twitter. Under pressure, Amode published a statement on Anthropic's website on February 26th. In the statement, the CEO said that the company could not, in good conscience, comply with the government's demands. The executive argued that, although he supported the defense of democracies, the current technology was still too dangerous to be used without the safeguards the Pentagon wanted to remove. On the afternoon of the next day, February 27th, the clash escalated to the presidential level. Trump posted on the social network Truth Social that the United States would never allow a radical left-wing artificial intelligence company to dictate how the military should fight. In the post, Trump ordered federal agencies to stop using Claude within 6 months. At 5:14 p.m., 13 minutes after the Pentagon's deadline, Hegseth carried out what experts consulted by the international press called an attempted corporate assassination. He designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk to national security. It was the first time in United States history that this label, usually reserved for foreign adversaries, was applied to an American company. While Anthropic's legal team rushed to prepare lawsuits, OpenAI made its move. Sam Altman, who had been in talks with the Pentagon since February 25th, took advantage of the opening left by his rival. At 10 o'clock at night on February 27th, the CEO of OpenAI announced that the company had signed its own contract for use on the government's confidential networks. And unlike Anthropic, the developer of ChatGPT had agreed to the clause covering all illicit use. The company claimed it would maintain its safeguards through layers of technical security and internal classifiers, instead of strict contractual restrictions. Let me add a quick side note here. A confidential network is a computing environment isolated from the public internet, known as an air gap or sovereign cloud. It's like a digital bunker where government data and artificial intelligence models operate on controlled physical servers, protected by high-level encryption and strict access protocols. The goal is to ensure that national security information is processed without any risk of leaking to the web or being intercepted by foreign powers, for example. Now, to recap, in less than 48 hours, Anthropic went from being a leader in military systems to a state outcast, while its biggest rival took over as the new technological arm of the United States Department of Defense. Going back to Arthur I. Graza, the expert explains that this creates a ripple effect in the technology sector.
So the Ministry of Defense asked Anthropic to remove these limitations and gave them a 72-hour ultimatum, 3 days. And today it's clearer why this ultimatum was given at that moment, because it expired exactly on the Friday before the start of the whole conflict in the Middle East, on Saturday morning. Anthropic stood its ground and said it wouldn't do it. And then not only did the American government declare that this contract would be terminated, but more than that, the company would be added to what's called the supply chain risk list. What does that mean? It's, a list of banned companies. But it goes beyond that. No American company has ever been included on that list until now. Why is that so serious? Because it's not just about being banned from doing business with the American government, but companies that in any way do business with the American government also can't have any relationship with Anthropic. In other words, it creates a chain reaction that can, in fact, severely harm the company's business.
The Pentagon's attempt at corporate assassination turned into a public relations victory for Anthropic in just a few days. While the government tried to cut off the startup's financial oxygen, the public responded, and Claude even became the most downloaded app on Apple's App Store in 16 countries, surpassing its rival ChatGPT for the first time. Beyond the App Store of a tech giant, support showed up in more unexpected places, from messages of gratitude written in chalk on the sidewalk outside the company's headquarters in San Francisco to a public endorsement from Katy Perry. Meanwhile, OpenAI went into damage control mode. The announcement on the night of February 27th sparked a furious reaction among its own employees, who questioned whether the company had given in to government pressure and abandoned its safety promises just to keep the contract. Under pressure, Altman went on X on March 2nd to admit that the announcement came off as opportunistic. On the same day, OpenAI made a rare move. It announced an amendment to its contract with the Pentagon. In practice, the company added terms that explicitly prohibited the use of artificial intelligence for intentional domestic surveillance of Americans. However, the move did not prevent a talent drain, as reported by the Wall Street Journal. High-ranking researchers, such as Caitlin Kalinowski from OpenAI's robotics division, resigned, citing differences in principles. Another major blow was the departure of Max Schwartz, who was the company's vice president of research. In a post on X, he announced his departure specifically to Anthropic. In addition, the wave of support for Anthropic spilled over beyond company borders. On March 19th, a group of 37 employees, 19 from OpenAI and 18 from Google DeepMind, filed a legal petition in support of Modi's company. The text argues that allowing the Pentagon to use financial retaliation to coerce artificial intelligence labs into abandoning ethical safeguards would set a dangerous precedent for the sector's competitiveness and security. The saga reached the courts on March 9, 2026, when Anthropic filed 2 lawsuits against the Department of Defense. The company claims that the designation of supply chain risk was a punitive act motivated purely by ideological reasons. According to the company, the case was an attempt to silence its ethical convictions, which would have violated its rights guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. This amendment, as a reminder, protects freedom of speech and prevents government retaliation based on ideological motivations. Anthropic's case is very strong. According to Alan Rosenstein, a law professor at the University of Minnesota who spoke with the New York Times, legal experts consulted by the newspaper said the case is robust precisely because the risk label has historically been reserved for foreign adversaries, and there is no precedent for its application against an American company over contractual disputes. On Wednesday, the 11th, Modi's company announced the creation of the Anthropic Institute, led by co-founder Jack Clark. This new internal think tank will focus on the large-scale implications of artificial intelligence. For example, its impact on the economy, the legal system, and financial stability. We also spoke with Sandro Teixeira-Moita, a professor of military sciences at the Army Command and General Staff School. He emphasizes the need to discuss ethics as new artificial intelligences are integrated into the military sector.
The tendency for AI to speed up decision-making is very strong, and decisions in war are fatal. These are split-second decisions that can have impacts lasting for years, even decades. The ethical debate is extremely important. Right now, this debate is happening in democratic societies. Obviously, we're not going to see this debate happening in Russia or in China. So the position that Anthropic has taken is in line with what you've already seen from many experts on how AI should be used and how autonomous weapons should be used, and that they shouldn't be mixed. Autonomous weapons should have limited operational capability and should not be powered by AI systems, because otherwise you're creating an entity capable of fighting without human intervention, which could have disastrous consequences on the battlefield.
Right now, there's no winner in this story, but rather a question that the US Congress still hasn't been able to answer. In the absence of federal laws on artificial intelligence, who should have the final say on the use of lethal force? Generals? Politicians? Or the technology developers? Share your opinion here in the comments. If you're new here, remember to subscribe to our channel and leave a like to support our work. to support our community. The future comes first here at Olhar Digital.